Von Helsing.
Frankenstein.
Yeah, exactly.
Roderick Frankenstein.
Welcome back to GC8. That's Geek Channel 8. I'm Eric.
I'm Will.
And I'm Johanna.
Today on the show, young Frankenstein from 1974.
I introduced Eleanor to Star Wars for the first time yesterday. Eleanor is my toddler. This is one reason why I haven't been on the podcast of late. Toddler takes up a lot of time, but
Wow.
Eleanor was really into it, and especially into Boba Fett, who makes
How old
like
is she?
She's 2. And Boba Fett makes only like the tiniest fleeting appearance, and only in like that horrible special edition Jabba the Hutt scene that I hope they cut when they re-release the theatrical version in 2027. But anyway, so she was very excited to point out Boba Fett, and she learned to say R2, which
Okay.
was
This is
pretty adorable.
this is a true sign of a nerd. If you're like all about Boba Fett, like when you see Star Wars, because yeah, that's the true like sign.
Yeah. She immediately understood the coolness factor. To like, of all the characters, she pointed to like, I want to know that one's name, and talked about him afterwards. So
But
I
am very disappointed that you are introducing her to Star Wars using the special editions.
Disney Plus, what can I say? They make it a little too easy, but I'm hoping that when they release the despecialized version in theaters, they will release the despecialized version at home too. So hoping to fix this before she remembers. Like she'll remember Boba Fett, but she won't remember the rest of the scene, I hope.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Seeing that movie for the first time still burned in my mind. That was the movie that changed everything for me. Anyway, we are talking about films from the 1970s. This is a few years earlier. We're talking 1974 today. So let me talk a little bit about what was going on in 1974. January 7th of 1974, the Gombe Chimpanzee War... Sorry, let me start over. January 7th, 1974, the Gombe Chimpanzee War broke out in Tanzania. It's when the Kahama community broke away from the Kasakela community. I think that was the way it split. Could be the other way around. Anyway, it resulted in a 4-year-long chimpanzee war. Oof. And eventually the Kasakela won, but that eventually brought them into conflict with yet another group, the Kalande. We know all this because of Jane Goodall. February 10th, the Soviet Mars 4 space probe, it flew past Mars at a distance of about 1,300 miles, 2,100 kilometers. Took pictures, but it wasn't able to enter orbit due to some technical difficulties. March 29th, the Terracotta Army of Qin Shi Huang was discovered in Xi'an, China.
Wow.
April 5th, Stephen King's first novel, Carrie, came out. May 16th, Helmut Schmidt became the Chancellor of Germany, West Germany. There were still 2 Germanys back then. June 26th at 8:01 in the morning, the first purchase of a product with the UPC, Universal Product Code, was made. 67-cent package of Wrigley's Juicy Fruit Chewing Gum, which was the first item in a shopping basket of items at the checkout aisle in a Marsh supermarket in Troy, Ohio. This was the first use of barcode in retail sales. July 20th, the Turkish invasion of Cyprus happened. August 8th, Richard Nixon announced his resignation. It took effect the next day. September 20th, the Kootenai War was declared. The biggest ramification for most people in the United States was the 10-cent toll that the Kootenai tribe charged on U.S. Highway 95.
Huh. Wow.
I think the Kootenai were mostly in Idaho at that time. I don't know where they are now, but October 13th, the first Berlin Marathon was held with 274 runners moving along a, quote, mostly forested route through the city's Grunwald forest. November 18th, the U.S. President Gerald Ford and Secretary of State Henry Kissinger arrived in Tokyo. This was the first visit to Japan by any incumbent U.S. president. December 15th, Young Frankenstein is released in the US and Canada. This movie is really the third in a trilogy of films directed by Mel Brooks starring Gene Wilder. So we have to sort of talk about the first two to explore how this one came about. In 1963, Gene Wilder was starring in Mother Courage on Broadway opposite Anne Bancroft, who was at that time Mel Brooks's girlfriend, later wife. So over dinner one night, Brooks told Wilder about the screenplay he was working on, which was called Springtime for Hitler. And to everyone's surprise, it actually got made as the producers, and Brooks asked Wilder to star in it. For his next project, after that, he was working on Blazing Saddles, and he wanted the main character, which is the Waco Kid, to be the straight man of the piece. So he originally didn't want Gene because he considered Gene not a straight man, but a comedian, you know? So he gave it to a guy named Gig Young, an old-time Hollywood actor who's a severe alcoholic, all right? And in fact, on the very first day of filming, he had to go to the hospital.
Wow.
For alcoholism. And he called Gene to like mostly commiserate about this. And it turns out Gene had already memorized all the lines, so he got the part.
Good work, Gene.
I think he probably suspected that was going to happen. Back up a little bit here. Gene Wilder's agent was Mike Medavoy. And at the time, Medavoy also represented Marty Feldman and Peter Boyle. And so one day, by chance, all three of them were in the office at the same time. And Mike asked Gene if he had any, he knew that Gene was writing stuff, and he asked if he had any project that could star all three of them. Gene said, "As it happens, I do." Between takes on Blazing Saddles, Gene was writing out a treatment on a legal pad, and Mel Brooks saw it. All he had at the beginning was just the words "Young Frankenstein" at the top. Gene told him what it was, or his idea, and Mel said, "What's your dream for this movie?" And Gene said, "My dream is for you to write it with me and direct the movie." And then Brooks said, "You got any money?" Gene said, "I have $57. And Mel said, "It's a beginning. I'll take it as a down payment on writing and directing it with you." So starting that night, after shooting all day on Blazing Saddles, they stayed up nights writing Young Frankenstein.
For a film made in the 70s, it wasn't usual for it to be made in black and white, and they actually had to do quite a bit of shopping around in order to get the film made, passing it off from studio to studio, where one said, "Well, we'll let you do it, but for a smaller budget," and another saying, we'll give you the budget, but not for black and white." And they finally ended up at 20th Century Fox. One thing that's distinguishing about the film is that they used real props from the previous Frankenstein titles, particularly the lab equipment from the 1931 film, in order to lend it that like credible Frankenstein atmosphere that allows the comedic absurdity to really play in counterpoint to the seriousness of the story and the mood that the films it's parodying had cultivated. Marty Feldman, of course, stands out as a supporting character as Igor. And apparently, the joke about the hump moving back and forth was Marty's idea, and certainly memorable. The "walk this way" line, of course, is one that has stuck for the ages. And the Aerosmith song "Walk This Way" apparently does derive from this movie for its inspiration.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so apparently they were in the studio recording all day, and they went to see this movie, and accounts differ, but they all agree. Steven Tyler came up with the lyrics either that night or within the next 24 hours for a song called "Walk This Way."
So that's legacy for you. Additional legacy, it was adapted to a musical in the early 2000s. Didn't run for very long, but it did have an impressive cast of Broadway legends, including Sutton Foster and Megan Mullally. So some real humans who participated. And this helped to put wind in the sails of future similar parodies of horror films like What We Do in the Shadows. The mockumentary that was made takes a lot of inspiration from this kind of work of some seriousness and some absurdity, allowing you to really maximize both. The only other thing I want to mention, because I think we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of Gene Hackman's death, is to mention that Gene Hackman has a really great cameo appearance here as the blind man. And apparently he volunteered for this. He was just a super fan of Mel Brooks and decided he wanted to be in a film, and they offered him the part. And the line about "I was going to make espresso" was ad-libbed by Gene Hackman.
He was actually he was Gene Wilder's tennis partner.
Oh, that's part of it.
Yeah, and so he asked Gene if there was he wanted to do some comedy. He hadn't done so shortly before this. He'd done a very serious and one of his best films, The Conversation, which also had Terry Garr. I believe Francis Ford Coppola directed it, and it's excellent. Yeah. But he wanted to do some comedy, and
yeah, I mean, mentioning Terry Garr, the cast for this film is stacked. And some of them went on to have more influential careers than others. I mean, Terry Garr was everywhere. I recommend, this is a podcast, so we don't have visual aids for you right now, but you should all look up pictures of Cloris Leachman, who plays Frau Blücher in this film. And as Frau Blücher is terrifying, but she was a babe, and she had like a really impressive career on stage and screen outside of the Mel Brooks multiverse. So so props to Cloris Leachman as well.
So mentioning the passing of Gene Hackman, this actually pains me a little bit, because normally on the show we do movies where some of the cast has passed away and some of them are around, or it's old enough that they're all passed away, or they're all still around. Maybe one person's passed away. I have now reached the age where films, when I was alive and everybody was them was alive, all the major cast of this has passed away. Gene Hackman was the last of the major players from this that was still with us. Okay, I have one other little tidbit to add, which is that in an uncredited role as a villager, Clement von Frankenstein, who was a descendant of the noble house of Frankenstein, the namesake of the titular character in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus.
That's crazy.
Hilarious.
There was an actual Frankenstein in the film.
I wonder if it was like to bless the production, lest any like undead monsters come chasing after them. Or Frankenstein's not undead. It's what is he's in a class of his own.
He is created.
Yes, yeah. I see.
He's a creature, a creation, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I also want to say that it's got tons and tons of accolades, but one that's worth mentioning is Premiere Magazine voted the movie one of the 50 greatest comedies of all time.
I was just going to say that like a lot of Mel Brooks movies either land in this like it's an all-time classic or what was that? And that this one is definitely in the all-time classic category, and many critics say that it's his best film. And Brooks even thinks maybe it's his best film.
I think both Brooks and Gene Wilder thought this was their best film. So,
I mean, like if they like it better than having done Blazing Saddles, which is like, I mean, Chef's Kiss, so good.
and the producers and
And
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go!
so actually, a lot of times, I would say the Frankenstein films are challenging, but this time it was easy. Okay, because they actually feature a particular dish. It's a featured dish. As a matter of fact, it's like, I believe the line is something to the effect of like, usually I'm not that into dessert, but this is really good. Uh, it's the Black Forest Gâteau, which is as good as you're going to get out of my pronunciation, but it's the Black Forest cake. So the key here is, you've probably had it. It has the dark chocolate, it has the cherries, it has the whipped cream. What you probably not had, which would be, is that it would have the Kirsch, which is the cherry brandy, which is the important part to make it a legit one. I didn't have any of that, and I did not make this cake, but I can recommend that you should get this. And here where I am, I could probably get a pretty good one because we're sort of a German town, so we can get some really good baked goods this way. But anyway, no, 100% a delicious cake. I recommend it. I've had it before, and it's perfect because it is featured in a scene in the movie.
all right, you guys ready to start jumping into this and breaking it down scene by scene?
Yeah,
Yes.
with the taste of chocolate cake in my mouth, just like mentally. That was very helpful.
Oh, and don't forget the cherry brandy. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah, cherry brandy's key.
It's coming from the deep, dark recesses of the mind of Mel Brooks. I love him. Young Frankenstein.
Life, you hear me? Give my creation life!
Sky means business.
Starring Gene Wilder as Dr. Frankenstein.
That's Frankenstein.
Peter Boyle as the monster. Marty Feldman as Igor.
My grandfather used to work for your grandfather.
I'm sure we'll get along splendidly. Oh,
Cloris Leachman as Frau Blucher. And Madeline Kahn as Elizabeth.
What are you going to do to me? I'm not afraid of you.
Kill the monster!
See Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein.
yes, I think we could all use a good laugh.
But don't see it alone. Don't miss Young Frankenstein, personally directed by Mel Blazing Saddles Brooks, in black and white. No offense.
This thing opens with a neuroscientist lecturing at a medical school, and that is Frederick Frankenstein, who we find out is just the grandson, not the great, just the grandson of Victor Frankenstein. And of course, he's trying to like be taken seriously in the medical profession, but all his students want to know about the monster and Frankenstein, and he insists that he is Frankenstein and doesn't subscribe to any of that stuff. But shortly thereafter, he inherits the family castle, in Transylvania. And so he, of course, travels there by train, where we get the Chattanooga choo-choo line, which Mel Brooks thinks that nowadays nobody gets anymore. And then at the station, he meets Igor, who is the hunchback assistant that worked for Victor. So once again, hunchback assistant. They seem to be all over all of these.
How about that? My grandfather worked for your grandfather. How about that? Oh, yeah. It's like, oh, now the rates have gone up since then. Just just an example of how it's played so mild. It's like, where are we on this? Are we laughing or not? Is we serious? Is this a comedy? I mean, really, I love that.
Yeah, the whole mood. It's shot and it looks like it legit could be part of the Universal Frankenstein series.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Is it in the beginning of the film where there is the sort of parody of the romantic early 30s film where Victor's getting on the train and he's leaving Madeline Kahn at the train station and she's like, wait, they're having this like long goodbye moment. Like that's one of the best little parody moments. Like
it
not
looks
of
like
Frankenstein.
Casablanca. Yeah.
Yes, but just like a good parody of films from that time period generally. Very well done.
Very specifically, this movie is a parody of the two James Whale Frankenstein films, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, but it is also a sort of a satire of 30s and 40s films in general. Anyway, when he gets to the castle, he is greeted by Terry Garr's character, Inga, who is
voluptuous.
Yeah, voluptuous. Yeah, apparently they wanted to show as much cleavage as they could in this film between her and some of the other characters. And apparently they failed in comparison to the original.
Huh.
They weren't able to out cleavage the original because the original was made before the Hays Code.
Hilarious.
So he even talks about it in the book. Ironically, they ended up having less cleavage in it than the original Frankenstein. That gives you an idea of where we were at in the 1970s. The other woman that he meets is Frau Blucher. Yes, the housekeeper, and there's all the horses always make that neighing sound. No, they never explain it. It's just a running joke that happens.
It actually became a I don't know what the proper thing is, a meme that, to the point where people were thinking it was a sort of a folk tale that her name meant glue in German.
But it doesn't.
But it doesn't. But like it was something that people would talk about, be like, oh yeah, that's why they did that. And apparently I think our director even said that to Terry Garr. It's like, oh yeah, that's why. That's what the joke is. Making a joke on her. So yeah, it's very much again, subtle little bitty things, unexplained. We're not going to explain it. Done.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why the film is so successful is that it finds these moments to make fun of the atmosphere of classic horror films, not just like specific moments from the films that they are gagging on, but just like the whole idea of some of these tropes. They're identifying moments to make it funny.
Absolutely.
He spends a restless night where there's like this giant painting of Victor on the wall and he has a nightmare and like realizes he's just going to have to accept its fate for him to do this. Inga comes and wakes him up or whatever, and then they hear this creepy violin music and they go to try to find it. This leads them to a secret passage that is like the Scooby-Doo thing, the bookcase that turns around, Yeah. And there's some slapstick comedy with the whole...
the candle back.
Yes.
And basically they find this secret library and he begins resuming the Frankenstein experiments to create a creature. In order to do this, he has Igor steal a brain. And in classic hunchback fashion, he, of course, drops the regular brain, which it was supposed to be the brain of a scientist and saint, Hans Delbruck. which apparently there was a real Hans Delbruck. It's not why they changed.
What?
Apparently there was someone named Hans Delbruck, but that's not why they chose that name.
No.
Is there someone on the crew that they've named it after?
There is someone, and in fact, that person was the director.
Ah.
Delbruck.
Right.
Mel
All
Brooks.
right.
Yeah. But they drop the brain, and instead he grabs the abnormal brain. It doesn't say criminal brain this time. It's just abnormal brain. This gets put into the monster, and then there's the scene, the recreation scene where they bring him back to life. And this is the point of every Frankenstein movie podcast where I got to turn to Will and say, as an electrician, how do we rate this reanimation scene compared to others? Where does this rank on the scale?
Well, I'm going to say that the equipment was excellent, because of course they got the original equipment.
Yeah, Kenneth Strickfaden's equipment, which we said before, they just call him Strickfadens, and he got special thanks in the credits. This is the first time he's ever been credited in the credits. He was never credited in any of the old films. He showed up, and he even created new stuff apparently on the set. So he was still tinkering.
I particularly love the part where Frankenstein is yelling up to Igor and says, "Once you set it up, you need to come down right away. It's very dangerous. You could be electric." And like he just appears. Yes. What? Well, no, I'm already down here, buddy. I'm good. Yeah. So because yes, as usual, it's a mishmash of like, what are they doing here? There's some bubbling things and some shocky zappy things and all that stuff.
Oh, and Ben Franklin kite stuff, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
That's a good point. But I'm going to have to say that the absolute furniture chewing, like rending, gnashing of teeth that our Frankenstein gives just upstages all the rest of it. His is this again? It's like this could be an entirely serious film, but that's the kind of parody this is, and he really delivers. I think that's the better one. Of course,
he actually says some whole like poetic passage that's like right out of Frankenstein,
Yes.
Yeah.
But back to the electrician hat thing, there's like these giant switches on the wall, and they like the first switch, and then there's a second switch, and not the third switch. Oh no! So I'm wondering, like, could that be a thing? Like the third switch?
I mean, there is such a thing as three-phase electricity, so I mean, why not? Also, this is something that's come up, and I have not even looked it up before. But my mom asked me this: is like, what's up with this whole thing? Some people, mostly in the South, it seems, but not entirely, they'll say, "Cut off the light," or "Cut on the light." Now, yeah,
That's interesting.
I don't know if you ever heard that. Now,
I've never heard "cut on the light." That's fascinating.
yeah, and the thing is like, she asked me, does this have something to do with whether it's like, having lanterns or something like that? I'm like, no, you don't really do any cutting with that so much. You trim the wicks, but, and all that. But you do have those giant switches. They're called my switches. And so saying to cut them on or cut them off, that makes sense. And early on, those would have been the switches you would have been having.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It would have been, it's like one of those legacy words. Now, is that actually how it came to be? I don't know. I didn't bother looking it up. But yeah, the third switch, one more. Yes, you have to raise the stakes. You got to turn it up to 11, and they did. So, bravo.
Okay. So meanwhile, the townsfolk are really unhappy that a Frankenstein is back in the castle because as the Burgermeister or whatever, I don't know if he's called the Burgermeister here, but he's clearly the Burgermeister, says like, we still have nightmares from 5 times before. And I'm like counting them off in my head. And I'm like, wait a minute, Universal series, didn't we do that? Wasn't there like, I was like, okay, there's Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, Ghost of Frankenstein, and House of Frankenstein. That's 5. So It's literally referencing the 5
Yes.
previous Frankenstein
Yeah.
films.
Well, and there's a whole speech like that one guy. He's like he's just
Kemp, Inspector Kemp. Yeah.
No, before him,
Yes.
he's like,
Oh.
these Frankensteins, they can't help it. It's in their blood.
So they defer to this one-eyed police officer. He's got like a eye patch and a monocle, and the monocle's on the same eye that
Same
the eye
eye,
patch
yes.
is on. You know, he's got
Yes.
this prosthetic hand, and he's like, you know,
Like a precursor to Doctor Strangelove. I mean, that's
Yes.
sort of the way I
Oh,
think
yes.
of it. Yeah.
yeah.
Or a post-cursor? What's the time frame here?
I think
Post-
it's after Doctor.
This is
Strangelove.
after. So I thought precursor because I was thinking like this is set in like the 40s, but like the film was made in the 70s.
Yeah. So Doctor Strangelove was 64. So this is 74.
But I think clearly it's borrowing from that in some way. This
Oh, yeah.
same kind of Germanic comic
Yeah.
character.
He says that they need evidence, and he's going to go gather this evidence himself. Meanwhile, Frau Blucher has released the creature.
Sorry, I'm going to do it every time, Eric.
That's
You can't
fine.
stop
That's
me.
fine. I just expect it at this point. She's the violinist. There's a whole thing there about her romantic relationship with Victor and all of that. But while they're all there in the lab, there's sparks of electricity and stuff like that that set off the creature. He escapes the castle, like he runs away. He ends up roaming the countryside. And the first thing he comes across is the little girl, of course, throwing.
Yep, they got to do all the set pieces.
And so I'm like, how are they going to handle this? And they turned it into a different situation where there's like a seesaw, and he sits down on the seesaw and she goes flying through the air, lands in her own bed. And so nobody realizes what's happened. Right?
Yeah, it's funny. I like that scene, especially because they build it up just like you would for, oh my gosh, she's in peril. Her parents are looking for her. They know that there's a monster out there on the loose. They know that that's a thing that can happen now. And then, you know, we go through the whole thing. It's like, well, the flower's all gone. What should we do now? And of course, you know, classically, you go in there too now. But they do all of that, and then they just end it in just an absolute Looney Tunes moment where he sits on the other side of this, and it just flings her into her bed, like through an open window. And then they continue on.
Yeah. I have to say that backing up just a smidge, when he escapes, he busts down the door just like the door got bust down in Der Golem.
Yeah.
There's
yes.
definitely some of the golem in this as well, especially when he escapes the next time, but we'll get to that. He comes across a blind man, just like in the novel. I don't know if the blind man actually figures into the whale version of Frankenstein. I don't remember there being a blind man in that one. And that's, of course, the special appearance by Gene Hackman.
Yes.
Which is hilarious. He actually does comedy pretty well. Like, he's like feeding him hot soup, and because he's blind, he's like missing the bowl and spilling it on him, and all that stuff. Anyway, they recapture the creature, calm him down, stuff like that, and then he decides to start teaching the creature, right? So instead of the blind man teaching him, Frederick teaches him. He eventually decides to have a grand opening where he shows the creature to the world in a theater with all the literati and everything like that. He puts on a show where they sing and dance to Putting on the Ritz.
This is one of my favorite parts of the film because it's almost like a dream sequence from the original novel of what Victor thought was going to happen. You know,
Yeah.
like he starts on this dark path of like creating this monster creature, and clearly is just like so like full speed ahead on this thing. He never stops to think about like, how is this actually going to play out? Like when they meet the creature, how are they actually going to feel? And so in this moment with Putting on the Ritz and the whole song and dance thing, and they're in sync and the choreography is all together, that it's like that's what he pictured in his mind and never really like thought about how he was going to get from A to B. And because this movie is a parody, you get to see that dream sequence happen as if it could really happen this way, and it's spectacular.
It also reminds me a little of old monster movies, going all the way back to the silent films with the Professor Challenger with the dinosaurs. Like, I'm going
Yeah,
to show this to the whatever they're called, the Geological Society or whatever, and
it's a giant ape, it's a dinosaur, and I'll show off my find, and then everybody will love me.
and King Kong, yeah, it always escapes and it always like runs amok and like. Yeah, so it's got a little bit of that in it too. This scene, though, where they're doing the song and dance, this was the only thing Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks were not in agreement on when they were writing this. I thought it would be the other way around. I always think of Mel Brooks as like the over-the-top slapstick guy. He thought this was too much, too over-the-top, didn't fit the mood, like all of that. Gene Wilder believed it was like, oh, we're doing our version of this, and it was a huge fight. Gene Wilder was almost in tears, and then Mel Brooks said, "Okay, we can have it." And
It just breaks my heart to imagine Gene Wilder almost in tears about anything.
Oh my God, yeah.
And he said, "Well, why'd you change your mind all of a sudden?" And he said, "I wanted to see how hard you would fight for it." So when he fought hard enough that it needed to be in, he decided, okay, it needs to be in. The audience ends up like throwing vegetables at him and stuff like that, and he like freaks out and goes on a rampage.
Yes, and of course his undoing is again, it's fire. Fire is the undoing. And actually it's funny because in this particular film, we see over and over again these things where it's like, no, actually he has every reason to be afraid of fire because people are hurting him with fire and hot things. It's like, huh. Again, this could be totally serious. And as a matter of fact, in a lot of the versions, there's like, oh yeah, the plan is there, to take, and we're going to exhibit him. We'll take him on a worldwide tour. And even the part where they train him, well, we saw the one where it was not a bride one, but they did train her, the girl, in a Pygmalion sort of fashion. So they had brought back a girl and trained her and taught her ballet, or she taught herself or whatever. But there's always this, I don't know, thing. And again, if you cut this movie a different way, it could be a totally serious movie, and you could tell people it was from whenever, and we would believe it. I would believe it.
Yeah, well, when the creature rampages the second time, you see the shadows on the wall, just like their golem. There's a lot. This is when they were really leaning into it. Apparently, originally, the director of photography was being strictly sticking to the original Frankenstein film look. And at some point, they convinced him, no, we got to go bigger. We got to do more. It's like a whole genre parody, right? And so that's when he starts using, and he had a real hard time because horror and film noir, those looks are dark, and aside from like someone screaming, like a close-up of a face screaming, which has become such a cliche nowadays anyway, you didn't see a lot of emotion on faces, but you needed a brightly lit, you need bright lighting and happiness for comedy. So what they did was he split the difference. The DP would shoot like in moody, sort of shadowy shots in the wide shots, and then it'd be brightly lit in the close-ups. Anyway, Inspector Kemp basically riles up the mob himself. He's like, normally I'm against mob violence, but I think this calls for it, or something along those lines. And so they go out looking for the monster. Meanwhile, Elizabeth, the fiance of Frederick, shows up. At this point, Frederick's already sleeping with Inga. I think they're on the slab having the post-sex cigarette when Frau Blucher tells them that she's arrived. The monster ends up kidnapping her, and she has sex with the monster. In fact, I guess falls in love with the monster.
Yes.
Not really sure if that's the right word for it, but yeah, they definitely have sex.
And it's spectacular. It's clearly like better sex than any of us have ever had.
Well, he
Just,
has a giant. Everything's bigger with the monster, right?
And
that's what we are led to believe. But he also has skills. Like he's not just bigger;
Yeah.
he's got some skills.
Yes. Yes.
I think it was something to the effect of like, oh, she's like, so a penny for your thoughts, and then he's like, oh, you, well, okay, if you insist. I mean,
Yeah.
seven has always been my lucky number, and it's like, whoa, okay, 7 times, all right. But he is drawn away. Was he
Yes.
drawn away by the
Music.
music?
Yes.
Oh, man. And then she's like, you men are all alike. Oh.
So long story short, we wrap this all up. Frederick and Inga get together. Elizabeth and the monster get together.
How they pull this off is the doctor gets the monster back, and he says, the only way to make this right is to give him, his brain is abnormal. We'll do some kind of swap, and I'll make him normal for me, and I'll be the donor. He risks his own life. He does that. And so they do the swap, and the mob's breaking in, and they stop it in the middle of it, and they're ready to just kill everybody. And then suddenly the monster speaks up in a clear voice, and they're like, oh. And they are calmed by this. They're like, what? Well, I guess this is different now. You're not terrible. You're not, you're more like, oh, actually. And in the end, we see both couples, and they have one has just gotten married, and they're preparing for their wedding night. They seem to be really into the theme of the Frankenstein monster. So that's that's the doctor and his bride, and I don't know who plays the music, but the violin music plays, and then they get in bed, and then the other come in, and this is awesome. We have seen Madeline Kahn. She's coming to bed. She's like, hey, baby. And she's got the bride hair.
She's got the Elsa Lanchester hair. Yeah.
Yes. And then she comes in, and she turns around and she does this whole on her ass is like, yeah, I'm hot, baby. And I'm like, now for me, part of what it was so shocking to me is that, from what I understand, when she was recruited for Blazing Saddles, I think this was her. You guys will correct me if I'm wrong. Mel wanted to know, let me see your legs. And she's like, what? What?
Yes.
Well, he's like, I'm not going to make sure you got a good set of gams. And she's like, oh, she's thinking, no, I'm not doing that kind of stuff. But, obviously she did, and she did great. But by this movie, oh, yeah, she's all into it, and she just sells it. But what we find out is that there was an exchange. And, of course, the monster got, reason and calmness from the doctor. And the doctor got a little of that monster swing in return.
Yeah.
Isn't that it's a lovely story? It makes one want to cry.
And you get the sense that this is actually maybe what Victor wanted all along. That, that this whole intellectual thing wasn't really serving his deeper needs. And maybe he created a monster because he wanted to be one. And the creature was like, more Paradise Lost, please.
Right. Well, okay, look, we always have that thing where they're always so into this monster's body. They're like, this perfect man. Oh, this perfect flesh. I will perfect. I'm like, okay, all right, I hear you. That's also your kid, so that's getting really weird. So yeah, no.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I thought this was great. I liked that they recreated the feel of one of those original Frankenstein films. They used, the circle dissolves and all of those kind of outdated quote unquote techniques. That they shot it in black and white, which they had to fight the studio to do. The studio did not want to do a black and white movie. I am not a big fan of broad-based slapstick comedy. It's not my thing usually. But when it's done really good, it's really good. And this is an example of that. This is definitely one of the all-time greatest comedies, in my opinion.
I agree. I think it helps that it works on multiple levels, that it has the slapstick silliness of the hump moving, of, walk this way, of Gene Hackman, getting abused in a variety of ways. And that it also works on this intellectual level of Mel Brooks in some way putting his own stamp on the Frankenstein legend and his own interpretation of that text, which so many directors and scholars have been trying to work on.
Well, I'm going to give it a thumbs up, 2 thumbs up. But I have to point out if you're familiar with some of Mel's stuff, this is not Spaceballs. And I would even say this is not broad slapstick comedy. It's because it's almost, like when Weird Al does a style parody and he does it so well that he could be the original artist.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what it reminds me of. That's what makes it stand out in a way that if he had just come in, done a whole bunch of gags one after the other, he's done a lot of great movies like that. But that's not this one. This one is, subtle, and it slips right into the comedy and it slips right back out.
Yeah, I think that's the big difference between this and, say, Dracula Dead and Loving It. Whereas in Dracula Dead and Loving It, it's just slapstick joke after slapstick joke about the Dracula story. Whereas this is like tries to be part of the mythos,
Yeah, really does. And I think it delivers. It would if they had played it entirely straight. I mean, it could be the same exact script, exactly same script, and you would have had and played it entirely straight, and that's what it would have been, right into the mythos.
And I think one of the things that's great about it is that it seems to work as a sequel to the original Frankenstein, while also having this sense of like we are constantly repeating the mistakes of our ancestors kind of feeling of so like unlike a regular sequel where this would feel like a retread, because it's also a parody, it gets the benefit of both worlds.
Yeah, it really does.
Okay, we have consensus. That's 3 thumbs up. Nothing more need be said. If you've never seen this film, you got to watch it as soon as possible. But if you want to talk to us about your feelings or thoughts about this, you can join us on Facebook. We have a Facebook group. Or you can write to us at GC8 Podcast. That's letter G, letter C, number 8 podcast at gmail.com. Like, subscribe, do all those things. I'm tired of telling you guys to tell other people about the podcast, so I'm not going to tell you to do that, although you should do that. Until next time, this is Eric.
This is Will.
This is Johanna.
Signing off.